Hey guys, it's Lucky here, and today we're going to talk about the Barbarian. This is going to be a Whirlwind Barb. It's going to vacuum everything around it into its whirlwind, and it is going to spin to win. It is quite literally the definition of spin to win. We're just going to be spinning all the time, and we've got a couple of buffs that are going to make our spinning even better. So everything we do is in service to our spin with this build. You just hold right click and everything around you dies. Sound easy enough? Let's dive in. So the first thing we're going to go over is our skills, then our passives, and then our class specialization. The first skill that we're going to take is going to be our basic attack. Our basic attack is going to be our resource generator. You use this to generate resources, and then our core ability that we'll get next is going to spend those resources, right? So a basic attack is something that you can't get away from using from time to time, and so it's nice to have one that feels good, and this one feels really good. Lunging strike. You lunge forward, dealing damage to your enemy, and then there's a passive that says lunging strike deals 30% increased damage and heals you for 2% of your max life when it damages a healthy enemy. It also, critical strikes with lunging strike will grant you berserking for 1.5 seconds. That's huge. Berserking grants you 25% increased damage and 15% increased move speed. And this lasts for up to 5 seconds right now. So this skill is a gap closer. It is solid single target damage. It heals you and it buffs you with berserking if you crit. And you crit a lot in this game, right? Because we're going to have a lot of crit chance by the time we're done with everything. This is just a really, really solid build. And also this is great for killing mobs that are running away from you. Mobs run away from you a lot in this game, and this lunging strike, since it's a gap closer, it closes the gap. You just hold your left click down and you just poke until they're dead. Treasure goblins, for instance, you just click on them with this ability and they will die. Try it out when you run into a goblin. For your core ability, your spender, right? You're generating all these resources with lunging strike, and we're going to use Whirlwind as promised. Whirlwind rapidly attacks surrounding enemies, right? So you spin, you win, it feels good. And let's talk about which passives we take. We've got Enhanced Whirlwind, which says we gain 1 Fury each time Whirlwind deals damage to an enemy, 3 Fury against elites. So if you're attacking enough enemies, and if there's an elite in the pack, whirlwinding actually generates resources instead of consuming them, allowing you to whirlwind for nearly forever, right? So if you're fighting a big group of mobs, that's what you want. You never really want to be caught whirlwinding one mob. I mean, you can, but you're going to run out of resources pretty fast if you do that. And sometimes you don't really have a choice, but it'll be better. It'll feel a lot better if you drag that mob to the next pack and then whirlwind all of them. The next passive says after whirlwinding for 2 seconds, whirlwind deals 30% increased damage until it's canceled. So it's basically a 30% damage buff. Another reason to make sure that when you whirlwind for a long time, because this passive as well as other items make it so that you do more damage the longer you whirlwind. So you're really incentivized to keep that whirlwind going, to spin to win. Next, we're going to take a defensive skill, and the one we choose is going to be Rallying Cry. Why? Because bellowing a Rallying Cry increases your move speed by 30% and your resource regen by 55% for 6 seconds. That move speed feels really good, and so does the resource regeneration. Just as good as this ability is, this is even better. Rallying Cry grants you unstoppable. So you're going to get stunned, you're going to get immobilized, you're going to get crowd controlled. And this is how you're going to die in this game. If you're going to die, most likely it's because something impaled you, something has you CC'd, and your character can't move for like 5 seconds. Boom, you pop your Rallying Cry. This knocks you right out of that CC. It makes you unstoppable. And unstoppable means characters have all their crowd control impairing effects removed and prevented. So it removes any crowd control that's on you, and it prevents you from getting more for the duration. Next, we have Tactical Rallying Cry. Rallying Cry generates 25 Fury and grants you an additional 50% resource regeneration. So you've got 55% resource regeneration from the skill, another 50% from this passive, as well as a 25% Fury. So you start spinning, and the great thing about the war cries is you can use them while you're spinning. So you can start your spin, use some of your Fury, then pop this ability to get more Fury back, and keep spinning longer. Next up, we have Brawling skills, and we're going to take another war cry. Basically, we're going to take a skill called War Cry. It bellows a mighty war cry, increasing your damage dealt by 15% for 8 seconds and nearby allies. So this one buffs not only you, but also the people around you. So they'll love you for it. The first passive says War Cry grants you berserking for 4 seconds. Okay, that's huge, right? Berserking grants 25% increased damage and 15% increased move speed, right? So you're getting 25% more damage plus the 15% from the skill. So that's like 40% damage just from those two passives, right? Plus we have Power War Cry. If at least 6 enemies are nearby when you War Cry, your damage bonuses increase to 30%. So even more. Instead of getting 15% from the skill, you're getting 30% plus berserking, which is another 25. So like 55% increased damage just from the skill. for the duration, right? So that's really big. You really love that one. Once you get your whirlwind going under enemies and they're all underneath you, you know, you've got them sucked in there. You pop this one and you pop this one, your 2 cries, right? And you do big damage and great sustain for it. Next, we have weapon mastery. And if you'd like, you can take death blow. This is a really good single target damage ability. The nice thing about this is enhanced death blow. It deals 100% increased damage to bosses. So it's also going to help you with bosses. And then if death blow damages at least one enemy, you gain 20 fury. So it's another fury generator, which is great because you're doing the most damage anytime you have fury. So anytime you can like kind of get more fury back from using your cooldown abilities, it feels really good. If you're going to take some passives, I really liked It Fighter. You deal 9% increased damage to close enemies and gain 6% distant damage reduction. So this is nice. Everything that you're near is dying faster. Everything that's far away from you is doing less damage to you. Next, we have our ultimate. We get to pick one, and I really liked Call of the Ancients. This is nice. You get to an area, it's you and the boss, and this ranks up your single target damage because all 3 of the ancients leap onto that boss and do big damage to it, and you can burst it down. Because of this skill and the rest of the skills I've talked about here, I had no problem bursting down the Butcher, for example. A lot of people ran into the Butcher. A lot of people have been saying the Barbarian is weak. The Barbarian can't do anything. This build ran into the Butcher and slaughtered him. So if you want to kill the Butcher, you know, this build works. It works great. Don't be afraid of the Barbarian. The passives on this, while Call of the Ancients is active, you gain 10% bonus attack speed and 10% increased damage. Nice. And Supreme Call of the Ancients. Gain 10 fury each time Kralik damages an enemy with his frenzy. Enemies are slowed by 50% when they're damaged by Talik's whirlwind, and Maddock has a 30% chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds when using his upheaval, right? So the 3 ancients are doing big damage. They're buffing you, you're buffing them. You've got war cries that you can pop to make your damage and their damage even better, right? Nice synergies all around. For our key passive, we're going to take Unconstrained. This increases your Berserk's maximum duration by 5 seconds, which is nice, but it also increases its damage bonus by 25%. So it goes from 25% to 50% damage increase from having this passive. So Berserk becomes even more powerful than it is. Really, really powerful. So grab Unconstrained right there. Next up, we have the expertise system. And my advice for the expertise system on the Barbarian is to know that it's there, but also to kind of ignore it in the short term. And you're going to be finding weapon upgrades so often and so fast that, so it's going to be more about which one does more damage than what type of weapon they are, because this little buff that it gives you 6% damage you deal is inflicted as bleed over time. That's not that significant relative to your weapon damage in the short term. At the end game, long term, yes, this will absolutely matter. In the short term, don't stress it. Just, you know, if you see a weapon that does way more damage than the weapon you're using, equip that bad boy. All right. Now for useful legendaries, the Barb has a ton of useful legendaries. In fact, it has more useful legendaries than any other class, which is part of Blizzard's reasoning behind the fact that the Barb starts out a little bit weaker early on, but that's because they have more legendary aspects that they can equip later on. So here's some legendaries to look out for, and I'm going to have a written guide linked in the description below where I list out all of these legendaries that are useful for the Barb and where to get them. Some legendary aspects can be farmed from specific locations in the game with a guaranteed drop after completing a dungeon, right? So it's not up to chance all the time. Some of them are, some of them aren't. So definitely refer to the written guide for this build linked in the description below for way more information on the legendaries, but here they are really briefly. Whirlwind periodically pulls enemies to you. This is really, really powerful. One, for grouping them up and keeping them grouped up, because the most annoying thing about whirlwinding as a Barb is if you go through a pack of enemies and they all run in different directions. And so now you got to go whirlwind one at a time. And that feels absolutely awful. But when you get this aspect, you get this on your gear, that all changes. Now you vacuuming them in. And the great thing about that is not only is it pulling the enemies to you, it's a slight stun every time it pulls on them. So they're all on top of you. And if they're like mid attack and they get pulled again, they get disrupted out of their attack, you know? So it's kind of like a mini stun every time it pulses and pulls them into you. So it's protecting you and murdering them. It's great. It's perfect. This is also a really nice one. Damaging an enemy with a core skill has a 22% chance to extend the duration of berserking by 1 second. Double this duration if it was a critical strike. Well, we're always going to be damaging enemies with a core skill. We just basically hold right click and our core skill is spinning, and we're always spinning. So this is just really fantastic for this build. We always have a chance to get more berserking. And as we talked about earlier, berserking is giving us a 25% damage increase, also increase right on top of other stuff. Plus we get a passive later on that changes that to 50% damage increase rate. It's just huge. The next really notable legendary for this build is Whirlwind's critical strike chance is increased by 14% for each second it is channeled up to 50%. So that could have rolled all the way up to 80%, right? 80% increased crit chance while whirlwinding. So that's where the longer that you whirlwind, the more damage you're doing comes to play. This, and then the passive that's equipped to the skill where it says we do 30% more damage if we whirlwind over 2 seconds, right? You pair these two items and the whirlwind is doing insane damage after a while. And next we have Whirlwind leaves behind dust devils that deal damage to surrounding enemies. This one says 44 damage because I found it at a really low level. I would need to find it again, and then it would do a much more respectable 173 to 270 damage like it's supposed to at my level. But for now, I found a low level aspect. It's not doing a whole lot, but that is definitely a useful one to attach to this build. This one here is awesome. You gain 4 fury per second while berserking. This build is always berserking, so we're always generating 4 fury per second. This is really helping us stay in whirlwind all the time. So those are the legendaries that are specifically useful to this build, and in the written guide linked in the description down below, I'll have many more legendaries that are useful to this build, and many more. They're not as build specific, they're just generally useful and very easy to get a lot of the time. So be sure to check out the written guide linked in the description below for all of that information about the useful legendaries as well as the rest of this build. If you don't want to scroll back and forth through this video, that written guide is going to be 100 times easier to refer to when you're looking for specific information about the build, which skills we took, which passives we took, and all of that stuff. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. This is a new channel. It needs the algorithmic love. Thank you, and have a fantastic day. If you're not sure what to do next, maybe check out one of the videos popping up on screen right now.